You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley alongside Jake Mastroianni for the final time of the first half. The All-Star break is here. We have reached the, I guess, what you call the halfway point of the season, though mathematically we've been over that marker for quite a while. It is time for the Braves and the rest of baseball to take a little bit of a break as those festivities go on. But Atlanta wanted to finish up this first half with one more series victory, and that's exactly what the Braves were able to do, thanks in large part to Travis d'Arnaud. Some more good pitching. This Braves club was able to grab a 6-3 win over the Padres and take 2 out of 3 to close out a winning road trip. We're going to get into all the particulars of that, the All-Star, the draft, and all the other news that we need to as we take a brief peek at what waits in the second half as the Braves will get started again next weekend. Before we do any of that, though, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Jake, safe to say that the Braves enjoyed their stay in San Diego, taking the series. Some power from Travis d'Arnaud. I thought kind of a gutsy performance by Chris Sale. What did you see in the final game of the first half for this Braves club?
I mean, I saw Chris Sale winning another baseball game. Is what he's done for most of the first half. And you saw the offense pick things back up. And, now over 8 of the last 10 games before the break, they scored at least 5 runs. I know in between those 2, you got shut out. But for the most part, the offense has looked a lot more like themselves over the last week and a half.
I mean, you'll deal with the odd shutout if you have to. If it means that more times than not, you're scoring some runs. It felt like, while the Braves weren't always getting shut out from about, May 1st or last couple of games in April on, they just simply weren't able to do things like they did in this game. We've seen a lot more home runs from this Braves club. There's no two ways about that. Travis d'Arnaud with 2 of those in this game, a big 3-run homer to add to a lead. Jake, I think as we look at the first half and kind of reflect on things we didn't see enough of, maybe a big home run, a crooked number, a big inning to pad a Braves lead, that was a great thing to see on Sunday and hopefully a sign of things to come.
You hope so. I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum on here. Home runs are what this lineup is built on, and it's what they need to get to be able to generate, 4, 5, 6 runs a game. We just haven't seen that. And most teams do. Most teams need those home runs. And the Braves have a talented group up and down that is capable of doing that. We just haven't seen it like we expected to this season. So, to be able to see more of that and to be able to see, Travis d'Arnaud get that as well just speaks to the fact that there are guys up and down this lineup who are capable of doing it. So great game for Travis d'Arnaud. Needed every bit of it. I thought the solo home run later in the game was even bigger after the Padres had kind of narrowed the gap a little bit. To be able to do that as well, and just an absolute blast of a shot. Good job by Travis d'Arnaud. This offense again to kind of pick things back up after getting shut out on Saturday.
Yeah, you needed to see that bounce back performance. I feel like I've said that a time or 20 thus far this year on the Braves postcast here, but 2 home runs, 4 runs knocked in for Travis d'Arnaud on the day. Chris Sale, on the other hand, wasn't locked in early, didn't look awful, but just wasn't really able to, I feel like, be as sharp as he would like to be in that first inning, minimize that damage to just the 1 run, escaped, and then he was able to work his way in. You mentioned he won a game, his 13th victory in the first half for the All-Star, Chris Sale, who'll be heading to Arlington next.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing first half for Chris Sale. And again, maybe not his best performance. This Padres team we've seen in this series, they're a bit scrappy at the plate a little bit. Not a lot of swing and miss. They'll take some walks, not kind of similar to that Diamondbacks club that the Braves just played. Only 8 whiffs in this game for Chris Sale. We're generally seeing him up sometimes close to 20 whiffs in a game. Now, it didn't go as long in this one, only 79 pitches. I'm assuming that's just because you had the bullpen ready to go with 4 days rest. So why not just use your best guys and not push Chris Sale if you don't have to? They also talk about during the broadcast, and the numbers back it up, he does struggle a little bit in the first and second innings. Feels like it takes him a little bit to get into the game, and that was the case in this one, as he did struggle early on, gave up that run early, but then just kind of bounced back and looked more like the Chris Sale that we're accustomed to seeing. So, again, just amazing first half for Chris Sale, already to 13 wins.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk a lot about Reynaldo Lopez, the sub-2 ERA, joining the likes of like Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, among others, for Braves to reach the All-Star break, under 2 as far as ERA is concerned. But it's felt like, Jake, throughout the course of the first half, that Chris Sale has quite simply pitched like an all-star, and that's exactly what he is, most certainly. There have been some early struggles for Chris Sale, and I wanted to kind of look through and see what the splits say, because I know in those game logs, so when you go back and kind of look at what has gone on for him this year, there was that one awful start against the Oakland Athletics in which, if you take that out, which you can't, but if you were to do that, Chris Sale's first half would be even more impressive, and his ERA, not just in the first or second inning, but overall would look completely different, because this has just felt like, to make a long story short, a vintage Chris Sale performance. And like he's not only got a lot left in the tank, but almost like he's just turning back the hands of time, turning back the clock to be in the prime of his career.
And somebody who I think would have a legitimate chance of starting the All-Star game for the National League. I know they're going with Paul Skeens, and there's certainly exciting factor there, and Sale obviously not available to pitch now. But I think if he were, I think he would have a worthy case of starting in it, because that's how good he has been and how dominant that he has looked. You brought up Ronaldo Lopez, who pitched on Saturday and pitched well. And if you look at, just comparing the two, Lopez is a guy that every time out there, he hasn't had that blow-up start. You mentioned the one for Chris Sale. He's only really had that one, but Lopez has just been so consistent. But Sale's done it in a more dominant fashion, and he's done it going deeper into games, pitching 7 innings. A lot of times, like I said, in this one, I feel like he could have gone more, but there just wasn't really a need to, with all your bullpen guys ready to go and the break coming up. But he's just been so consistent. You don't get that many wins if you're not pitching deep into the games. You got to get some run support as well. But if you're not as dominant as he has been on the mound, and he certainly has been that.
Yeah, he has been. And everything that the Braves have needed, when you consider that the big stories of this first half, losing one of your best pitchers, also losing one of the best players in baseball on top of that, in Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr. respectively, you needed some guys to step up, particularly in this rotation. Chris Sale, I think, has done all of that and then some that the Braves could have possibly expected from him. Offense, as you mentioned, it got kind of powered up in the middle innings, but early starts, Matt Olson, Adam Duvall, each knocking in runs before Travis d'Arnaud took it from there with the final 4 runs knocked in. Needed to see, I think, some signs of life from various Braves hitters. Adam Duvall's been showing that the past couple of weeks. Matt Olson, I'll get a lot more into it later, so we'll kind of save it for the next segment. But he's a guy that's been looking for any little signs that he can, knocking in the first run of the game. Maybe that's a little bit of something to kind of take him into the All-Star break, get a little bit, detached from the game, and then come back in a fresh state of mind on Friday.
Yeah, would love to see that from Matt Olson, a big second half. I know you've been talking about the lack of run production there for him, but again, be able to have that spot here. And then, everybody in the lineup, except for Kelenic and Rosario, had a hit in this game. So that's certainly something that you like to see. And Kelenic's unfortunately started to cool off a little bit as well at the top of the order. But, everybody, is going to have their moment. And that's usually the thing with this Braves team, is that you have others that can pick you up when somebody's not going like we're accustomed to seeing, and we just haven't seen that enough in the first half of the season. So that's why I think it is big that a guy like Travis d'Arnaud can come in, drive in 4 runs for you. Adam Duvall, who he has certainly had his struggles in the first half, but he gets an RBI hit in this game. So just great to see others who are able to contribute.
Yeah, 4-3 road trip for the Braves. Felt like a little bit was left on the table with the finale against Arizona, but at the half, Jake, 53-42 are the Braves. I talked about this on my show From the Diamond on Sunday as well. You look at a Braves club that's 11 games over 500, and you think, all right, well, that's workable. They're sitting in a spot to go to the postseason as the number 1 wild card team in the National League. That's a very different discussion than the Braves have been having the past 6 years. But that aside, I don't know that this has necessarily felt like a club that's been 9, 10, 11 games over 500. A lot of that obviously built on the month of April that they had, but they have still managed to, despite all of the shortcomings of this offense, find their way to maintain at least their opportunity to get to October, which, maybe in the second half, they'll finally be able to solve some of these ills and these riddles and figure some of this stuff out. But I guess looking at that record, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. And the response that I get on social media a lot, it certainly doesn't feel like a club that's 10 plus games over 500.
It doesn't. And look, if we're being honest, they're living off the first 3 weeks of the season where they were really, really good. Since that point, they've been more like a 500 baseball team, but they've been able to maintain that. And look, I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but you do lose Spencer Strider. You lose Ronald Acuna Jr. You lose Austin Riley for 2 weeks. Ozzie Albies for a week. Michael Harris has been out for a while now. I mean, those are key parts of your lineup, and there's not many teams that could withstand all of that and do as much as the Braves have done. Now, I still think they could do better. I still think there's enough talent there for them to be better than they have been. But, let's not glaze over the fact they've lost some key members of this team. And Ronald, especially, I mean, he's the MVP. And even with him not having a season like we were used to seeing him have, he was still a guy that was getting on base at a 340 clip. And he's somebody that can steal a base for you and help you find other ways to score runs. And it's just been so feast or famine now in this lineup where you have to live by the home run. And those just aren't coming as frequently. So there's been a lot going against them, but they've still been able to kind of battle through that. And like you said, hopefully we're going to see the best yet to come in the second half.
Yeah, year over year, home run wise. And I know, and I've heard, and I've talked about it, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about it. It doesn't have to be a home run or nothing. But when you're dealing with a 40% drop from year to year, I mean, I don't know where else those runs come from. You can manufacture some runs, certainly, but I don't know that you can overcome a 40% change and regression in your home run total. Not many clubs are designed to withstand that kind of power outage. Be that as it may, we got a lot more to get to on this edition of the Braves Postcast. We'll get inside the line score and box score of this game, talk more about Chris Sale, get into more of the first half that hasn't been certainly what Matt Olson wants it to be, and we got to take a look at the draft as the Braves were busy on Sunday night there as well. We'll get to all of that as the Braves Postcast continues. Summer travel is heating up, especially travel for baseball games. So, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yeah, we're talking about your rival cities. And for the Atlanta Braves, of course, that could be Philadelphia, could be New York, might be Miami, could even be Washington, D.C. That's all up to you. But with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more, Booking.com, you just might find your perfect stay there, even in your baseball city's rivals, as those hotels overlook stadiums. They've got family-friendly resorts. Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. that your summer travel this MLB season can be taken to that next level. And the right stay, of course, can make you a fan of any U.S. city, including your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site, or you can download the Booking.com app today. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Well, Jake, let's get inside the line score and box score of today's game for the Atlanta Braves, who again finish out the first half with a 53-42 record. Braves had 6 runs on 9 hits, no errors, and 4 men left aboard for Atlanta. Padres, 3 runs, 8 hits, no errors. They left 7 men on base. Winning pitcher Chris Sale now 13-3. Vasquez takes the loss for San Diego, drops to 2-5. Save goes to Raisel Iglesias, his 22nd of the season. Padres now 50-49 on the year. Still in that wild card hunt, which is quite a lot of teams in the National League, all piled up upon one another outside of that third and final spot. Braves, of course, up by 4 games for the top wild card spot and adding another win to their tally today. Chris Sale, 5 innings of 1-run ball, 4 hits, 2 walks, only 4 strikeouts, as you mentioned earlier, Jake. Not a big day for swing and miss, but when it came to getting the job done, Chris Sale once again did what he needed to do to pick up a victory.
Yeah, you mentioned the term "got the job done." I mean, we talked about that a lot last year with this Braves team and taking care of business against teams you should. Chris Sale is just taking care of business against pretty much everybody. And again, you losing a Spencer Strider. Look, I'm not saying Chris Sale has to be that, but he certainly has pitched that way for the Atlanta Braves, kind of making up for that and what he has given you. And again, it's all, what does he look like in the second half? That's all fans are really going to think about going forward. But it's just, again, we say it all the time about him and Ozuna and Lopez for that matter. Where would this Braves team be without those guys? And just, Alex Anthopoulos having the forethought to go out and get Chris Sale, and not get that, but then show him confidence in him by giving him a deal as well and guaranteeing another year. So to be able to see something in Chris Sale, to know that he can give you this type of level of performance. Look, I think if Alex was being honest, he probably wouldn't have imagined even this good of a performance from Chris Sale that he's given you so far. But I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, for still seeing it in Chris Sale and knowing that he's capable of giving you top of the rotation stuff. And that's what he's given you in the first half of the season.
Yeah, and not to roll back into a hot stove show, but I'm not sure there were a lot of clubs out there that were even thinking that Chris Sale's really available, that the Red Sox are shopping him, or they might have just looked at that money that was due and said, "No, that's not really the route we're going to go," and kind of close that door before even having that conversation. But I would bet you this: if there were enough clubs that knew, or I don't guess Alex knew either, to your point, but if the clubs are seeing now and in hindsight, which is always 2020, and could pull the trade off for Chris Sale, I think a lot of clubs would go back and try to get into that derby. But Alex Anthopoulos was able to find this piece, get him installed, and as you mentioned, take some of the money that Boston had brought over and kind of turn it into a multi-year deal to keep this guy around. And yes, how important is it to have a proven pitcher like that in your rotation just on its own? Absolutely. But when you lose to Spencer Strider, you need somebody to step up. And Chris Sale has both the talent level to do that, the experience level that so few pitchers in baseball have. And he's been a huge part of the success of this rotation. Again, it wasn't exactly his best start, but an example I felt like, as we point out, of just getting that job done and without his best stuff on this day. Braves scored 1 run in the 4th. It came on a Matt Olson RBI, another in the 5th, courtesy of Adam Duvall. Then it was Travis d'Arnaud, a 3-run homer in the 6th inning, adding a solo homer in the 8th after the Padres had struck for a couple of runs with a pinch hit shot of their own. Kind of a good day, I would say, for the offense to find the runs it needed. A different guy at a different time does feel reminiscent of last year as well. Different guys on different days doing the thing. 2 hits and 3 plate appearances, both of them homers, 4 runs batted in, and 3 runs scored for Travis d'Arnaud, who also walked. Just a really good day for him to close out the first half, and hopefully for the Braves, they can get that catching duo going, as Sean Murphy's also been swinging the bat, I feel like, a little bit better over the last 3-4 weeks, and finally get the kind of production that they're accustomed to having from the guys who are handling this pitching staff.
Yeah, it's a tough situation because you have 2 guys that you really like in Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud, and you feel like you want to get their bats in there as much as possible, and it's just tough to do when you're trying to split catching duties. So good to see Travis d'Arnaud have that good game. I do think we'll probably see more of Sean Murphy in the second half as he has been swinging a much better bat here of late. But to have a guy like Travis d'Arnaud to be able to fill in like this, and had a stolen base in this game as well. Let's not forget that, and came around to score on that Duvall hit. So that was good to see. You also had Albies in this game as well, getting on base. So just good to see that. Again, I'll take all the home runs. I'll say it all the time. You want to hit 2 or 3 home runs a game, that's fine. But it's good to see them be able to move some runners around and be able to score in that way. So just smart base running by Travis d'Arnaud. Had a great game. I wouldn't say it's his best of the first half with that home run barrage he had earlier in the first half of the season. But again, just to be able to have that type of veteran that can come off the bench for you, start a game, come in and pinch hit for you late, it's just so valuable in Travis d'Arnaud.
Yeah, just one of the important pieces of this team. And d'Arnaud, with 4 runs knocked in, the Braves certainly needed each and every one of those to win by that 6-3 final score. Now, Matt Olson, I mentioned we were going to get into this a little bit lately, and we had one of the comments, in the last video that we did that said, well, Matt Olson hasn't really been struggling. I'm not really sure where that comment comes from, and it's not to pick on Matt because he's had some highs and some lows, and far more lows than he would like, certainly in this first half. 4 RBI in his last 22 games. And again, that's your cleanup hitter. 146 average, Jake, since June the 17th. That's a 26-game span, about a 33% strikeout rate over that time, and on pace for just 22 home runs this year. And again, it's not to hang it all on home runs or that he needs to just be home run or nothing, but this is your cleanup hitter, and it's been going on for a while, and it's tough to have that consistent offense that you like when somebody's going through it as much as Matt Olson has been going through it. And this is really the second long slump for him over the course of the season, and something he'd love to correct, and maybe a little bit of time off over the All-Star break will help out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a guy, he plays every day. He goes out there every day. So maybe this is a good time for him to kind of take a break, reassess, because you can see the frustration from him.
Yep.
You've seen it over the past several weeks. He certainly knows he's not playing like he's capable of and not being that cleanup hitter that the Braves need him to be. And look, Matt Olson's somebody, he is one of those 3 true outcome type of guys. He's usually either, going to hit a home run, he's going to walk or strike out. But here lately in this first half, it's been a lot of one thing. It's been a lot of strikeouts because you said the home runs aren't coming either, and he hasn't been walking quite as much as we're used to. So it's been a rough first half for Matt Olson, although he did, along with Marcell Ozuna, help keep this offense going through May and the early part of June when he did kind of figure things out. But now, as you mentioned, he's going through his second long slump of the year, and you can't afford to have that. As you said, already with your cleanup guy. You have to be able to drive in more runs than that, and he just hasn't been able to do that. And, you know, that's with guys getting on base in front of him. So, again, maybe the break helps. I hate to say maybe you need to make another adjustment in the lineup if that's the case, but hopefully he just comes out in the second half and we see that power for Matt Olson again.
Yeah, and overall, lowest walk rate of his career, highest strikeout rate since the 2020 season. So it's been a minute for Matt Olson on both of these categories, especially the walks. That's a little bit surprising because, as you mentioned, you know, those three true outcomes. I think that Olson doesn't necessarily want to live in that space as much as he has been at times. But right now, the outcomes are not really what he needs them to be and what the Braves would, of course, love them to be, knowing what he's capable of doing. When we come back on the Braves Postcast, we'll talk a little bit more about closing out the first half. Of course, the MLB Draft happening on Sunday. We still got to get to those draft picks and take a look at the All-Star break overall and what waits on the other side in the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll do all of that as the Braves Postcast continues. Here on the Locked On Braves Postcast, we pride ourselves in getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round, and you know what else is year-round is collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let licensed professionals and tax experts over at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years experience and an A-plus rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and you just need help to correctly file it, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade your wardrobe with a professional stylist that helps you find those new on-trend favorites that will work for you. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel like you feel as good as you look. Now is the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time. That is stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. Well, Jake, there is a lot going on this weekend and this week, despite the fact that the Braves are not going to play another baseball game until Friday. We, of course, have reached the All-Star break. The Braves get there with a 53-42 record, 8.5 games back of the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League East. For context, the Braves were 60-29 at the All-Star break a year ago, so things have changed quite a bit. Phillies essentially have a record right about as good as the Braves were a season ago. They have the best record in baseball. So there's some work to be done in the National League East for the Braves, who are still sitting at the top spot of the wild card race. Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez, Marcell Ozuna, and now Max Fried are heading to the All-Star game. We hadn't gotten to talk much about that, but I know that you, from watching Max Fried as closely as I have this year, once he got those first couple of starts out of his system, it has been an all-star performance for Max Fried.
It has been. So certainly deserved for him. And I think it's deserving that you got 3 pitchers from this Braves team into the All-Star game. Now, unfortunately, you didn't get some of your relievers like Jesse Chavez there on your shirt. But again, it's just, I think it shows how big the pitching staff has been for the Atlanta Braves in this first half. I mean, with the offense struggling the way that it has been, and, you know, despite losing Spencer Strider, the pitching staff is why the Braves are still 11 games above 500. So I think it's very rewarding that you got those 3 guys going to the All-Star game, along with Ozuna, which, again, the offense would not be anywhere close to where it is without him in the first half.
No, I mean, we'll say it again one more time to close out the first half. Where would the Braves be without Marcell Ozuna this year? He's going to be in the home run derby on Monday if you're worried about his whereabouts. Snit Bear will probably be there with him. I don't know, though. Can't speak for him. The All-Star game is on Tuesday. The Braves had those 4 representatives I just mentioned. So if you're looking for what's going on in Arlington, Texas, Marcell Ozuna could put on a show. I was looking at the field for the home run derby, Jake. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like Marcell's got as good a chance as anybody in that derby. I know Pete Alonso's won it a couple of times, but Marcell's got some serious power, and he doesn't mind putting a ball or 2 into orbit.
Yeah, no, he certainly has a chance. Pete Alonso seems to live for this moment, so he's going to be a representative. I'm looking forward to a couple young kids, though. Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt Jr., I think those are going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely should be. We'll see how Marcel's able to stack up as the home run derby happens on Monday. Once the All-Star game is done on Tuesday, a couple of off days for the Braves after that, and we'll get to what's awaiting them at Truist Park. But Sunday also busy because it was the MLB Draft. Jake, a high school pitcher, a lefty, and Cam Caminetti, if you know that name, it's because he's the cousin of Ken Caminetti, briefly a Brave, former National League MVP. He was the pick at number 24 for the Braves, their first overall pick of this draft class. What are your thoughts on Cam Caminetti? It sounds like he's a guy that has a lot of talent, could have been a two-way star, but the Braves are going to utilize his very high-powered left-handed arm.
Yeah, I think this is a surprise for the Braves that he fell to them here with this pick. Kind of the second year in a row, they've had a really talented arm fall to them at 24, but this was the highest rated high school pitching prospect according to MLB Pipeline. So to be able to get him here, I think is a great pick for the Atlanta Braves. Left-hander. He's also 17. He's really young for this class. So you get him at a very young age so you can develop him there. It's probably going to cost them a good bit of money, most of their slot money there for that pick. But again, you get a kid with this young that has this much talent, and with the Braves farm system, what they've been able to do with pitchers, it seems like a really exciting pick for him.
Yeah, looks like it. And the Braves, I'm sure, are going to be excited to put him in a farm system that they've really been trying to restock through the draft. Not surprising with how many pitchers they take every year. And they've done so with a great amount of success with some of the guys who have come up not long ago being drafted and jumped into the Braves plans. Probably going to take a little bit longer for Caminetti, him being a little bit younger, but you can never really rule out how quickly he could move. We saw how A.J. Smith-Shawver did it, so who knows how this will play out. And the Braves, of course, will continue their draft class throughout the rest of the week and round that out. And we'll have a chance to maybe talk a little bit more about that when we get back in the second half. However, though, coming out of the break, the Braves have some business with another wild card hopeful team, the St. Louis Cardinals. They've been right behind the Braves in the wild card standings here lately. You know, this is a club that the Braves have seen a little bit up in St. Louis, and a club that every year, Jake, I don't know what it is with the Cardinals, even when you're not sure how they're doing it, they still figure out a way. But I think this might be just one of those really weird years where it almost feels like there wasn't a lot to expect out of them, but maybe the Cardinals just have a way with things and always manage to push themselves into the discussion when it comes to October.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly do. Last year was certainly a weird year for the St. Louis Cardinals. You don't expect to see them down near the bottom of the National League Central. So they're bouncing back just like you knew that they would. And they're right there in the mixes, again, right there in the wild card spot behind the Braves. So it's going to be an interesting series coming out of the break with those two top teams for the wild card. And the last time played the Cardinals, obviously, they always seem to get some sort of luck that goes their way. It seems like every time we play them, and it happens a lot. So they're a team that certainly scares me from that standpoint. But a good matchup, some good tests for the Braves coming out of the break. A lot of teams, of course, everybody in the National League seems to be kind of in it. Everybody's kind of jumbled up there. But they got a lot of teams who are trying to figure out what they're going to do at this trade deadline. Are they in it? Are they not?
Mm-hmm.
So going to be a tough test for the Braves coming out of the break.
Yeah, the Cardinals are test number one, 3-game series that begins on Friday night. Then the Cincinnati Reds will roll into town. And then it's going to be a road trip leading up to the trade deadline. 4 against the New York Mets, actually, then 3 against the Milwaukee Brewers. And we'll see what the Braves have managed to do by the time the trade deadline rolls around. But it's only now, a couple of weeks and a couple of days away, Jake. We know there's some areas that the Braves would love to fortify, but as you pointed out, and I think as we've talked about a little bit on here, it's hard to know who exactly is going to be a seller and who exactly is going to be a buyer right now, particularly when you look at this National League wild card. The American League is a little more cut and dried over there, but the National League, there are probably a half a dozen teams, I would estimate, that have to make a decision on what direction they want to go with their season, depending on how many games they are out of that final spot.
And look, that's what this new postseason format has done. Love it or hate it, it certainly has kept more intrigue and interest for a lot of these middling teams getting late into July. And these teams have to decide, is it worth trading this player for, maybe a mid-tier prospect, or do I just hold on to him and hope that I can find myself in the postseason and make a run like the Diamondbacks did last year, the Rangers too, that came out from a wild card team. So again, it's a tough call for a lot of these teams, and we're going to have to make it here pretty soon after the break. Mets being one of those. They've been playing good baseball lately. They're right there in the mix. What are they going to do? So really interested to see how things shake up again right out of the All-Star break.
Yeah, I've heard they don't mind spending money up there either, their owner. So we'll see just how impetuous he might be, but they're just one of many teams will have some decisions to make. Cardinals, of course, another one. Braves and Cards will open up that series on Friday night at Truist Park, 7:20 p.m. Eastern time, the first pitch. But we got a little bit of a hiatus to take between now and then. Marcell Ozuna in the Home Run Derby on Monday. 4 Braves All-Stars will be representing the National League on Tuesday at the All-Star Game in Arlington. That brings this edition of the Braves Postcast to an end. It brings the first half to an end. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Also, make sure that you are leaving us those likes, comments, and sharing the show with a friend. We appreciate that. It helps the channel grow. And make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We look forward to catching you in the second half. And until then, so long, everyone.